Okay, well, shit, everybody. I'm sorry for all that mess. I thought I had this worked out, but apparently working with a pre-scheduled event was just not something that OBS wanted to do today. So, damn, that's yeah. I will certainly keep this going for the full hour, but hopefully that doesn't mess with you guys' schedules too much. Um, so I'm going to kind of stall just a little bit because I know that we had all this mix-up nonsense. Um, but the main reason that I wanted to do this stream was just to kind of take questions, Q&A. I'll be happy to like rip apart any of these that I've done and just show you what my process, kind of the thoughts behind any of these, or really just whatever you guys want to talk about. So I'm going to try to keep an eye on the chat as well as, do this. So um, if I miss your question, sorry, feel free to, spam it in there. If it's something you think is really important, I'll try to keep up as best I can. Looks like there's about 40 people in here right now, so that's probably not too bad. So wallpaper. Oh, so it's actually it's a big like print back there, and then my office is in the basement, so you can see my like cool stone wall back there. Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna see if I can switch to my sweet like picture-in-picture setup that I did. Yep. Okay. I'm gonna try to get that set a little bit better. That looks pretty good. Okay, so I'll be a little more personable for a second here. I'm gonna pull out this chat so that I can see it better. I'm just gonna keep narrating everything, I guess. Yeah, or Kansas City, Williamsburg, Kansas City. Yeah. Okay, so let me do like a proper introduction for any of you who don't know who I am, who for some reason came over here amidst all of this chaos. So I am Kyle Hamrick. I'm a motion designer, video editor, general post-production specialist, I guess. I teach and do training, stuff like that on motion design and video editing and freelancing and all that kind of related crap. So um, yeah, as you can probably tell, I don't do a lot of live streaming. I've done one or two before, but not on this machine. And clearly I overestimated my technical capabilities there. So great. If you want to find out more about me, you can visit me at kylehamrick.com, which is right here. Hey, looky there. And if you if this level of organization and preparation is just really selling you on me, you can also come see me at the Keyframes conference in Orlando next month, keyframesconference.com, and or I will be at presenting at Post Production World at NAB this year. So you certainly don't have to come see me, but if you're there, come talk to me, say hi. I know some of the other people in this stream are going to be on there too, so yeah, yeah. Come talk to all of us. So, what do you guys want me to talk about besides that stuff about myself, which is weird? If you want, I can kind of just like fiddle around in here on stuff, but I assume that you guys probably have some questions or have specific ones you want me to rip apart, so just let me know. And until then, I'll just sit here awkwardly. Okay, yes, yes. I'll start out by just talking a little bit about the general idea here. Again, in case any of you are unfamiliar with what I've been doing here, I, a couple of years ago, saw a presentation by Brian Maffett, who is like one of the old school After Effects trainers, and among many other things that just blew everybody's mind, he built a couple things with the text animator, showing how it's a procedural animator, and it's a lot like the MoGraph module in Cinema 4D. You can, create this line of objects, and then you can apply text animators in sort of a modular way where you can affect things procedurally, and it gives you this really cool degree of control. So it enables some really neat stuff. Some of them are really useful, some of them are not so much, but you can do some interesting stuff in here that you can't do anywhere else, or sometimes there's ways where you can do something much more easily than, it might take you like 30 pre-comps and a bunch of expressions to do what you can do in one text layer. What program do I use for turning vectors into type? I've tried a couple different ones. There's a few websites like FontStruct, and there's a tool called FontSelf, I think. Am I making that up? FontForge I have used a couple times. I've kind of tried a few different ones. I didn't do too many custom fonts for this 30 days project that I did here. Again, just in case any of you don't know, for the last month I've been posting daily versions of these little experiments, just to kind of put a bunch of stuff out there. I feel like about 8 of them are really useful, and the rest are sort of just like silly doodles. But okay, so I saw there was a question here. The circle to diamond, right. Okay, I have to remember what some of these are called too. That was swirl circle, maybe. Some of these, the names evolved a little bit as I went, because it maybe started as something that was more swirly, for example. So, oh, here's a little tip, by the way, if you don't know this. If you control or command click, by the way, I can hide my OS bar, give you a little more screen. If you control or command click on a twirly, you'll open everything. So instead of like having to click, 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 all that, if you just control click on the main thing, it opens everything, which is really useful for, oh shit, I'm sorry. Let me switch back to that. Yep, real professional here. There we go. Real professional. Good thing I'm watching the chat, right? I know, this is the worst. You should really all ask for your money back. Yeah. Okay, so yes, you can now see my After Effects interface and a tiny little picture of me in the corner. Accurate? With whatever delay we have here. I assume, yep. Yeah. So, okay, great. So, like I was saying, you can control click or command click on a twirly, and this works on any of the sub twirlies too. And then you can open up everything, which is really helpful for this and shape layers where you just got like this super dense, long thing. So I'm going to actually control click this closed, and then just to kind of get rid of some stuff, I'm going to Alt Shift click on some of these other things to hide them. So you can kind of see here, just going to undo those. This is just a line of periods, and then I guess I should have kept my mask, on an animated mask. So you can probably see my points here, and then it animates to that shape and then back to a circle. And so you can just create a big line of periods, apply it to that path, which I did here. You can see it was, there's some actual rotation on the layer as well. Bing, you can see right there. And then I just did a handful of, yes, there's ways to like retain your selection states of your thing. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat. I should focus. So let me just open these one at a time so you can kind of see what I'm doing. I did a general position adjustment just because there was like a little bit of a gap here that I was kind of offsetting this so that it lined up better with the points. Ding. But you really can't see it until it's animated. So just to point this out, the text animators don't need to be animated necessarily. You can just use them for adjustments. So in this case, I just created one and then I just deleted the range selector that was on here. So the one that's actually doing most of the work here, which I named unzip, you can see in action here. So what it's actually doing is it's a couple of range selectors and an expression selector. So I'll delete these so you can kind of see one at a time. So this first range selector, you can see I've got position, scale, and rotation, and they're actually just, they're only keyframed because I changed the values for the second part. So you can see here's what that first range selector is doing. It's just shoving it way off the line, okay? And then the second one is just to bring it back for the other part, so don't worry about it. Yeah. So yeah, here. Just in case you haven't seen what I'm doing here. Line of periods, the tracking is really crushed. So you can see here it's just a line of periods. And then you can draw a mask. Let's make that a circle so it's similar. You can draw a mask, and then within your text options, path, mask 1. And now it's applied to that path. And now you can start doing whatever. Yeah, I know. Believe me, damn you, YouTube is correct. So now that you've got it applied to the path, all those text animators can just work along this path here. So that's the basic principle that I used to build this one and to build a lot of these. So that unzip thing here is just pushing it way off the path. And if you look here, if you use shapes other than the traditional square, it gives you really different sorts of effects here. So square is just shoving it way, way out to where you can barely even see it there. But if you try some of these other ones like ramp or the triangle, smooth, circle, etc., you can get these progressive offsets like this and can do some really interesting stuff. So I had this one set to smooth. So smooth kind of, it's kind of like a curve like this. And if you watch my School of Motion tutorial, I walk through this pretty clearly. I can do it real quick on here too if you want, but you can, if you using a line of periods like this makes it really easy to see what the shapes are actually doing. And smooth gives you this nice little like bell curve. Okay. You know what? Here. Here is a link to the tutorial. There you go. I had the link in the YouTube thing that I was trying to stream to before, but here we are. What a mess. Okay, so this unzip, yes, of course, Melinda K or Melindak. I like Melindak. So it sort of pushes it out, and then this other one does sort of the opposite. And then I'm using this expression selector, and sorry, Joe, if you're in here, I think you are. Yep. This is before you fixed that expression for me. But what this is an expression that is telling this expression selector to do the thing for any characters that have an even index. So every text character has an index. Starts with 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. These are typically letters. But if you use this thing, you can actually tell it to reference that index. And so right here it's saying if it has an even number, do the thing. In this case, all these adjustments that I made. If it has an odd number, or if it's not even, basically, then do something else. And so you can see I've kind of pushed it over to here. So if here's that unzip as it was, and then here's that unzip with the alternating. So it's pushing the different ones, it's pushing the alternating characters in different directions. And then I've also applied like a multiplier on it here. So one of them you can see is being pushed a lot further than the other. So that's what that behavior is. Hopefully that sort of answered something. Let me know if you want me to dig into that any further. I think I also did, yeah, just had like a tracking animator on this to, a lot of times I just kind of stack little adjustments like this because sort of you kind of have to do, you kind of have to like eyeball a lot of this stuff. So I kind of like build the basic motion and then I will, you know, add in little tweaks to kind of push it around the path the way I need or just adjust. It's not always the cleanest workflow, but hey, Tori. A lot of times you're kind of just like trying to make it work with what you're doing. I feel like I was largely at the, had kind of finished this one up, so I'll answer Tori's question. This one, the Watercolor Swirl, is that what you were looking for, Tori? Probably. So this one is very effects dependent. And one of the things that I found on this, and this is generally a helpful thing anyway, just as like a thought experiment, see how much you can do on one layer. Obviously on shape layers, you can do a lot because those, I have before packed like an entire comp just into one shape layer just to kind of see if I can do it. But seeing how much you can pack onto one layer is a really great thought experiment. It makes you learn a couple of great utility effects that will be really helpful for a lot of things and save you a lot of extra layers sometimes. Sorry, I'm going to take a little sip here. I should have filled that with vodka. Just water, unfortunately. Okay, so this is, let me kind of turn these off and work them backwards. So this is, oh yeah, I use CC Composite on like 80% of these. And yes, as Mikey pointed out, everything that you can put on one layer means it can be a preset. Obviously, that's not always useful, but especially some of these that I built that are, you know, wipe transitions and stuff like that, you can make these presets and give yourself just a couple of tweakable controls and use them every day. So as you can see, this is just a line of periods again. I'm using Azo Sands. It has a nice round period. And they're just on a circular path, kind of like I showed you a minute ago. So then here's an animator that's just static, and it's just cranking the scale way up. I lied to myself here. This should technically be 4,000% scale. So it's just scaling way, way up on Y. And you can see I can crank this down. You can see what's happening. It's just whoosh, cranked it way up. Just to point this out too, I didn't bother on this one, but something that you can do, which can be very helpful for these. I don't know how closely you guys can see this. Let me maybe change the color if that helps a little bit. Each character has its own anchor point, and you can offset those. In this case here, there you go. Can you kind of see those anchor points? And so that is a big determining factor on how these things are going to scale or move or whatever. Again, if you watch the tutorial, I point that out pretty clearly. So these got cranked way up in scale, so they're just kind of blasting out into forever there. And then I animated the rotation and the scale here and did this with a ramp. Let me kind of make this more visible. And the offset's animated, so you can kind of see they're scaling up and rotating here with kind of on a progressive thing. That's what the ramp does. And then I did another here with the position and then kind of some offsets of the scale, more rotation, some color, and another ramp. So these are kind of pretty similar, and then this is actually just linked to the other one. Let me see what I did with the expressions here. With using a function called value at time, so it's offset slightly. I give myself a slider down here to offset it by 6 frames. So just as it is here, that's kind of what it looks like. That was just me kind of fiddling around with a couple of text animators, and I made that. And it's like, okay, that's pretty neat. So then I'll start adding some effects to just dress it up. So this is just a slider. Something that I found really useful, and I know Mikey used this to great effect recently, was using the stroke effect on a text layer, because then you can stroke the path. And where are my effects controls here? Bing. No, 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 not you. Effect controls. There we go. So you can stroke the path that the text is around. In this case, I went ahead and let it be kind of dotted, but you could make it a solid line. And so that gives you some really cool capabilities here to be able to have a line and then have objects along that line and have them all move together. So you could animate the path, you could use the nulls to path points script, and you can do some really, really great stuff there. So that's just kind of rotating around, you know, the same way. And I used roughen edges here to kind of globby it up. And so then the stroke mostly isn't even visible. It's just kind of giving you some little kind of lowlights around the edges. And then something that I've used a lot in these is the echo effect, because that's a good way to add some visual complexity by adding like a second instance of the thing. And then after that, I just kind of messed with some coloring. And another thing I've used a lot is the transform effect, because if you use transform and then echo and CC composite, you can stack those in interesting ways to give yourself like multiple versions of the thing, but sort of composited with itself. I used that same strategy in this mandala one. So there's actually one version of it that I built, but then I transformed it really small and then composited the original back on so that it kind of doubles what I'm using there. So I did sort of the same thing here. There's a transform to kind of make it just a little bit smaller, and then composite the original back on here. You can dictate what blending mode it uses. Oops. And where am I? Multiply. So in this case, it was, you know, kind of laying on top of it. I mean, you can just play with this. It's probably all I did was just fiddled around. And then I sort of re-roughened the edges to make it all kind of globby and painty here. And that's where we ended up. So I ended up using like roughen edges and kind of the like blur levels, like alpha crunch technique on quite a few of these, because it enabled me to give these a really like cool organic feel, which is nice, but also sometimes you just need it because like if you're doing the tapered stroke, sometimes it's hard to get those last couple dots to kind of cleanly go in there. So like that's very similar to what I did here with this flame one. So like there's the original from the text animator, and if you look close, you can see like the gradient along those dots and stuff like that. So some of this is for you know, just helping smooth that out, and then some of it is to kind of help this, you know, look less crappy. So if you are not already familiar with this technique, you can use Gaussian blur. Just crank it up to, you know, anywhere from like 20 to 40, kind of depends on what you're doing. And then you can use the levels effect on the alpha channel to just really crunch that in. And you'll see how you can just really kind of clean something up like that. And then I went ahead and put roughen edges on top of that so that it kind of just, again, globbied everything up. And then I added some glow because it's fire. And so then we ended up with that. And if you want to see the guts of this real quick, it's really just, it's a handful of things, but the main thing that's happening here, there's a couple of, you know what, I think roughened is doing a lot of that. So it's just a static tapered stroke, and then there's some position with a wiggly selector. And if you stack wiggly with a range selector, you can kind of clamp it so that it holds on one end. So that's what's happening. It's basically saying don't wiggle this, but then progressively wiggle more and more as you get to the end. And so then you get this wiggly behavior here. And then with that roughen edges, which I'm kind of animating the evolution of, it really gave it that nice fire. Yes, embiggen. That was basically like a little Easter egg for myself, but I knew like 3 other people would enjoy it. Let's see. Day 27. Oh, the octopus, yes. So this octopus was a complete happy accident. Anyone want to guess how I did this. I think a couple people already did on social media, and they were incorrect. So I shall reveal here what's going on. Let me whoop, kill all the effects and kill all the stuff. So there's the octopus. It's a big line of dots. There's no 3D on this one. Nope. So this one's not even on a path. Looks like I just made a line of dots and I ended up rotating the thing, which I kind of did after the fact. I did not set out to make an octopus, by the way. This was just sort of an exploration, you know, which a good half of these were just fiddling around, and then I kind of landed on something interesting. Okay, so I will frequently use an animator just for the tracking. So boom, compress the tracking. By the way, just to throw this out there real quick, if you have never paid attention to this, the stroke effect, which we all know and love and has been around forever, if you crank up the spacing on this, the stroke effect is just a line of dots along your path. So you're doing the same thing, you just have a lot more control over it this way. Sorry, I need to turn up my heater. I'm getting chilly. So back to this. So this is just the tracking really compressed. So I did my little tapered stroke trick where I have a scale, and then this will just be set to ramp. I use that a lot, and you can see I'm ramping down from the original scale to 25%, but it's whatever I want it to be. And you could even like go underneath, go negative, and you could like put a twist in here. And then some of these things I probably just added after the fact. I realized that a fill brightness would be nice. And if you saw my little mini tutorial, you'll see where I'm going with this, the one I put out about Colorama. So then I created one I called Flow, which is again just that kind of clamped wiggly selector behavior. You can see it's just wiggling the position, and then I just tinkered with the wiggly settings until I kind of got movement that I liked in here. It was just going, you know, something kind of organic and tentacly. And then I thought he needed kind of a head, so I just kind of like blubbed this back out here. Tinkered with the position just a little bit and the scale. You know, I could mess with this. It's kind of hard to get a smooth thing there, so I kind of like just giving him a little bit. And then I did that blur and levels combo there just to kind of smooth it out, globby it up. And then here's the thing that's doing all the heavy lifting here is echo again. I did 8 copies of it and I offset them by a whole bunch. And so there's my tentacles. And then, like I said, Colorama is really useful for these because you can do a progressive gradient along your path. And Colorama can take that lightness value, that white to black gradient, and then apply colors to that. And really just by default, that's, you know, by default it'll look like this on this thing, but you can tweak the gradient to do whatever you want. So with Echo, it's tweaking each of those along their individual gradients there. And then I just kind of added some other stuff to dress it up, used a transform effect to kind of make it walk across the screen. And I actually ended up doing all of this without any keyframes, you can see here. I mean, there's a couple of expressions, but I'm not sure. This one takes a little more time to preview, so I might have to knock it down. But so you have the wiggling tentacle, and then, you know, 8 copies of that, and then it's just being moved across the screen, but I gave that X movement a little bit of variance so that would have kind of an organic, flowy kind of feel as well. So hopefully that was, you know, somewhat useful. I don't know if this octopus is ever going to be useful, but I thought it was sort of interesting. Okay. I'm going to see if I missed any other questions, but feel free to hit me with some more here. Yes, Echo rocks. Echo is, you know, probably really underused. It's really handy for just kind of like doubling something up like this. Yeah, I've already seen some people do flowing hair like this, and honestly, a friend of mine had taken some of these techniques that I'd been posting and made flowing hair, and I was like, I should do one that kind of like, you know, helps clarify that a little bit more, but I didn't want to just do flowing hair, and this is where I ended up. And yes, Tristan, I saw you, and I know your screen name. Hello. But yeah, this is pretty useful. It does get kind of heavy, so you know, you might want to like, if you were going to be using this for flowing hair, you might want to kind of dial it in on one strand, and then you could pre-render that and just time offset it, and that would probably be a lot more performance friendly. But being able to do this, especially mashed up with like master properties, you can do some pretty complex stuff, you know, with relatively few layers here. Okay, the moving arrows. Oh, Justin, you mean this one? Because the moving arrows, like the path arrows here, were day 5. So there's this, or there's the 11th hour wipe transition. And now we see exactly how much of a delay we have on the stream. Well, I'll talk about this one, I guess. And you can tell me if it's not what you want to see. Yeah. And my dog's barking at someone really loudly. Okay, so this one was just a bunch of hyphens. I picked a font that had sort of a slanty hyphen. No, the one after the hose, I think. Well, I'm going to do this one. Sorry, Justin, deal with it. So this is just a bunch of hyphens, and I tried to get them like more or less aligned, but then it was kind of easier to, again, this isn't animated at all, but use an animator to just kind of like fix that alignment. Let me turn up that and turn this off so you can see. So I just kind of fixed the alignment by using a ramp, and that way it's kind of progressively offsetting each one, right? I'll come back to your the chevron ring. Oh, that's what Justin wants. Yeah, I'll deal with that in a minute. So then we have them all aligned, and then there's just a couple to kind of bring them on and off. So honestly, this one was like kind of simple structurally. I did enable the per character 3D here, so you can see there's just a position move on. I just pushed them all the way off the screen. Oops. There you go. So if I turn this back on, you can see they're all kind of floating over here. And then they just get pushed over here, pushed into position. And then the key here is that the randomized order was on. So if I shut that off, you would see that they would flow in order like this, which, you know, is still cool, certainly. But I thought it was more interesting if they were randomized. So they're coming way over from X, and then they have some Z in here as well, which kind of helps with the giving them a little bit of depth. And then the off is just the same thing in the other direction. It's just pushing them off. I think I just, yeah, looks like I just duplicated it and then set this to subtract. So it's just doing the same thing, but it's taking it back away from that. Kind of learning these modes and the shapes is really the key to kind of unlocking the power of these. And then I did just a little bit of stuff. I let them cast shadows with the material options. So one of the cool things about using the per character 3D is that these are all native 3D objects. So you can extrude them if you're using one of those renderers, but you can also cast shadows onto other things, like onto other layers or onto themselves. And so as long as you have a light in here that is capable of casting shadows, let me open that up, which it is, cast shadows on, then these will cast shadows on themselves. which is what enables this look here. So Justin was asking about the chevron ring, which is probably the most render heavy of these, so we'll see how this goes. This is another 3D one, obviously. Let me, again, just kind of like, see if I can kind of pull this open. So it's just around a circle again. The layer itself has some rotation. Let me kind of hide that. Okay, cool. And boop. So it's a bunch of, yeah, looks like greater than characters. I just made enough until it went around the circle properly, right? So I tried to, some of these I named better than others, but so I did a little tweak to the anchor point and then just rotated them all on X. This would probably just be square. It's just everything. I didn't really even need this. I could just kill this range selector here, okay? Because it's not doing anything. It's just a static adjustment to all of them. Yep. So that's unnecessary. Delete. So I used that alternate expression again here. So it's doing every other. Bing, which is making some of them bigger, and it's helping kind of offset the position a little bit. They're kind of pushed slightly in Z. And if you are using the Cinema 4D render, which I am here, the coloring options change. What would normally be the fill color becomes front, bevel, side, back, because each of those has their own fill. So you can see that I actually had built this before I made it 3D. And these stay in here for some reason, I guess, so that if you go back to using the regular render, that it doesn't break it. So this is just some coloring as well as the scaling, and then it's technically alternating the coloring as well, which is kind of interesting. So then another little size adjustment to kind of offset that more. And then they are I keyframed the rotation, but again, using that alternating expression. I use that a lot because it's kind of an easy way to get a lot of kind of bang for your buck here. So that's what's doing that. There's like a handful. Oh, I didn't even use any effects. Oh, I cheated a little and used an adjustment layer to do some styling on this one because doing it on the layer itself just wasn't quite working because of the renderer. So yeah, that's that. The rest is just kind of lighting and you know, positioning it with the camera and stuff. Okay, so I'm getting a couple of other suggestions here. Oh, so I'll come back to the Star Wars one in a minute. That one was really ill-advised, and I was kind of angry at myself for even thinking of it. So yeah, as you probably saw with the, you know, the keyframes that I posted, this one was sort of nuts. Okay, so the stars. So here is, I thought this would be a nice, like, tangible example that would, you know, kind of bring this home and be less abstract. And it was specifically my friend Liam had sent me a message that he had just used some of these techniques to animate some stars for something. And just like sent me a message telling me how useful this stuff was. And I was like, yeah, stars would be a good one to help, you know, show that. I had a stars one I'd been playing with, but was just never really happy with it. So I kind of made a new one. So I'll do the same thing here. This one has a lot of animators in it. Kind of close all these up. There we go. A lot of animators. Whoop. So one thing I'm using a lot on these, and I genericized everything so that I wasn't giving this away in the project files that I'm going to post at the end of this, by the way, is Type Array, which is a really, really great tool for doing text animations. And if you're not familiar with this, it's a tool called Type Array by Paul Slemmer. It is pay what you want or $10, and it's well worth like a million times that. I use this all the time. It uses, it builds you a little pseudo effect here that gives you some controls. And this looks like actually an older version of it, maybe. I've lost track at this point. I have a couple versions plus like my own versions of it that I've tinkered with. So Type Array gives you just some easy keyframes here. And you can also make it so that layer markers drive like when each word or character comes on or whatever. And it uses an expression selector to do that. Tell you which version it is here. Okay, that's, here we go. This is the new version. So there's type array bringing these things through that movement here. You can see the keyframes down here that are actually pushing that. So they're at original position, pushes them way out, and I'm just kind of animated in some overshoot and stuff, and then they come back. And then I did a second one to add in some rotation and additional movement and stuff so that I'm getting that thing. And then I'm using this font called Seeing Stars. This will be in the project file, obviously. I just got it from DeFont. So I brought this on, and then a bunch of other characters come on. I ended up kind of adding these later, so I kind of put them in a less intuitive spot, but I made it work here. So yeah, honestly, I don't remember step by step how I built this. It was probably just sort of figuring it out as I went. I did try to label everything fairly clearly so that eventually through all these animators and keyframes, it gets to where this is actually the first line here, and then these all get progressively animated on and stuff too. So a lot of this is just using range selectors to kind of isolate things by line here so that you can just restrict your effectors, which is really what these animators are, to certain character ranges or line ranges or something like that, so that you can decide which pieces of it are getting those adjustments. I can do the Star Wars one now, or if you guys have anything else that you want to ask about first. It was probably, what, like almost 12:30 by the time I got started, so we have a while here. I'm happy to take questions about any of these. I think what would be useful on the Star Wars one is to show you what the actual text looks like. So hang on, I'm going to create a new comp here. Do a new live one. Great, no pressure there. Okay, you know what? I'll do a new live one, and then just something simple here so that you can kind of see the thought process. I did not go over the hex grid yet, JC. I'm just going to do one live real quick. You can kind of see the thought process, and then I'll come back to some. So my go-tos have been like Azo Sans and Balboa. Those are like my roundy period and square period go-to fonts. And I've been doing a lot of these with just periods because it's easy and it's a pretty standard shape. So you can tinker with these as much as you want, get a lot of cool stuff out of them. I'm going to go ahead and just center that up. So let's make that bigger just so that we can kind of do something with it. So I'm going to open this up, and you can see there's me adjusting the anchor point. Let's put it at the bottom and maybe the left corner. There are some scripts that do this stuff. I've reduced my workspace way down, but I do have one text anchor that I use quite a bit. I believe this is by John Colombo, One Resonant, which is a handy one for setting these automatically. The problem with periods is that, like, because they're at the bottom, this doesn't always work real well. But if we want it at, say, the bottom left, that at least gets me in the ballpark. I'm going to adjust it like that. So now if I add an animator for scale, which is kind of, a nice easy thing, you can see we've got all of them animating from that anchor point, okay? So let's maybe have them animate to like, so let's see, here's 100, 100, and let's maybe crush the tracking so that they become solid. And then let's have them all animate to like 50, 600, okay? And so each of these things, if I turn this off, you can see that's where they were. This is what they're animating to. And then by default, you're using the square shape. So it's just animating all the things to that. You can use the start and end value to kind of constrain what portions of it are doing that, right? And then you can offset where that happens. Again, I covered all this pretty in-depth in the School of Motion tutorial. Where you get a lot of power, though, is when you start using the other shapes and combining multiple animators. So if I use smooth, for example, and then I kind of crank this in, crank in my start, crank in my end, you can see I get this nice little like bell curve here of what's happening. And so a lot of times the way I'll build these by kind of, starting with a basic thing. And the cool thing about these is that you can always come back and add other stuff. So maybe you realize you want to add some rotation. You want to add, like, you also want them to move way down. And so I could then, animate my offset property here. Let's just see what that does. So, it doesn't look like much yet, but it's kind of got some potential, right? Maybe we want to crank these in just a little bit more, and maybe we want to like give it a fill color as that happens too. And so you can see that it's got this nice like progressive offset happening here. And if you want to tweak that too, the ease high, ease low are what enable you to kind of control how sharp of a change that is. You can also use or keyframe this amount right here. So you could even have it happening all the way, happening in reverse. Reversing colors is always interesting. Oh man, I make so many sound effects, like nonstop. I'm probably trying to be more conscious of it since people are watching me right now, but sound effects all the time. It helps you animate better. So that's pretty cool, but let's maybe add like, I'm just gonna duplicate that range selector and set it to subtract so that this one, let's maybe just push that a little bit differently here. Let's see what happens. You know what, I should probably like, maybe I'll add that. Of course, there we go. So here's a second one, and let's make that happen like way less. Maybe not be time offset quite that much. Maybe have it kind of catch up and see what that does. So this will give us the big one, and I think I got it too close. A lot of this is kind of just like, there we go. There's a secondary one. So there's the main one, and then see that secondary one here? Whoop. So a lot of this is kind of just playing and seeing where I get. So I don't know, maybe here, I'll grab some of that effects chain real quick from this and kind of crush those in. Let me just really blobby that up and crush that alpha even more. And like, look at that, bloop, kind of getting a nice like smeary paint thing already here. You get the idea, right? My primary thesis on these is trying to give people enough so that they can play with it themselves. So, hopefully the longer tutorial has done that, and I've seen some people posting them, so I know it has. But, if you just dig into these and explore, you can do some really neat stuff. Evan's correct. All pros make sound effects with their face. Okay. Is it time for Star Wars? It might be time for Star Wars. Any other? Oh, you know what? JC asked about the hex grid, so I'll do that one real quick, and then I'll do Star Wars, and then we'll wrap it up. How many people are watching this? 33. All right. I wonder how many we lost from the YouTube fiasco. Some probably. Okay. Hex grid. Where did I do that? Here we go. Whoop. There you go. See, I can't even turn things off without sound effects. Okay, and I had a couple of effects on here. Let me see what I did. All right. So this is a font called Hex Gun that, again, I just got off of, 93 eyeballs. Nice. That I just got off of DeFont. Again, I specifically sought out this one because I wanted to do a hexagon thing. Bonus that you guys get to see, I started by making a triangle wipe. It's going to be kind of slow here. And, I just felt like I was doing too many triangle things, and I wasn't real happy with the way that I was able to get this working. Like, it was a little too, I don't know, poppy for my taste. So I was like, you know what? Everyone likes hexagons, and every motion designer has had to make 100 stupid hexagon things, and it's always a pain in the ass. So I'll make one. So you can see it's just typed out in lines, and I figured out that if this is centered, which it is, if you alternate odd number of characters, even number of characters, odd, even, so it's, you know, probably 10, 11, 10, 11, whatever, that they all just align themselves perfectly. So you can see that here, or pretty close to perfectly as I needed them to. I'd kind of fiddled with the tracking and the line spacing until they lined up correctly, right? You can just see that there. I just made it look right. Yeah. And so then I did just a tiny little scale tweak here because I kind of like decided I wanted strokes after the fact, so I just tweaked that a little bit. So I used 3 instances of type array to build this one. And here, let me change the background color or something here. Where's my, here we go. I have a little preset named styling that I use all the time. It just gives me access to the fill and strokes. So let me turn that on so we can actually see what we're doing. So by default, they just sit here. And then I have a handful of these instances of type array that are driving the on-off in different ways. So some of these are by character. You can see that here. This one's animating several properties, and it's doing it by lines, actually, excuse me. So you can see it starts up at the top, and it's scaling them down and rotating them in 3D space and fading away and stuff like that. And then there's another one that, sorry, the first one pushes them on, the second one pushes them back off, and then the third one brings them on and off for this last part. Did I do all of them by lines? Maybe. Yep, they're actually all, oh, the last one's by characters because it's kind of a like cascading fall off there. Yeah, Tris, I'll work on that later, the soundtrack. So again, this was kind of just me playing, and hopefully, I mean, this is, you know, included in the project file I'm about to put out, so hopefully some of you guys will take this and make it into a really useful preset. I would like to spend a little bit of time giving myself like some more dynamic sliders and stuff to kind of control these. I know Mikey has some amazing expressions that he's written, which I specifically avoided in these so that I wouldn't be giving it away, but where you can have one slider that dictates how many characters the thing draws. And that's really useful for building stuff like this into rigs. So I could see this being a really useful just preset that, you know, you can just apply and then get just a couple of controls about, you know, for color and speed, on, off, stuff like that. Steve, I'm using the current version of After Effects, the current release, 16.01. But all of these should work in the last couple versions. I don't believe, if you go back too far, you're going to lose the Cinema 4D renderer. But aside from that, they should all work. Like, in theory, all these capabilities have been in After Effects since like 2007. You know, you don't get the Artisan 3D renderers that far back, but for the most part. I believe that's when the per character 3D text was put in there. Okay, so is it time for Star Wars? I think it's time for Star Wars, because that was by far the stupidest thing that I've done lately. Oh, cool. So for what it's worth, Steve, I did the download that I'm about to put up. I did downsave this to the last couple versions, so people should be able to open it in previous ones anyway. Okay. So honestly, I don't remember. Did I see this clip recently? A lot of these I had kind of built like last month because I knew I was going to be really busy through a lot of January. But I just started building this one like on Monday or Tuesday. I don't know if I saw the clip or if it just popped into my head, but it occurred to me that these are all just simple shapes in this in case any of you watching this somehow don't know what this is, it's the turret heads-up display from the Millennium Falcon. Also, if you don't know what this is, you should probably just leave the stream because we can't be friends. So I watched the reference several times here. I've got a couple reference clips. You can see, oh, I kind of have these set to, sorry, like I was overlaying these as I was actually working, so they're kind of set like lower opacity and stuff. So I just, put these on here so I could kind of see what the originals look like. And one of the things that was really kind of a pain in the ass to recreate was this kind of like echoey look that it has. And at first I tried using echo, but then I realized that the ships don't have an echo, so I couldn't do that. So I had to manually build all of this. This whole thing is basically frame by frame animation. So I had to figure out how to get the wings to all be one piece so that I could 3D rotate them with a bunch of hold keyframes, as you see here, and then have the middle circle, and then the ships be their own thing. So let me just show you what the source text looks like on this, because I think that'll help clarify. So like, I'm going to call this, here we go. Here's a clean comp. Oops. Okay, I'm going to have to size this down, but yeah, let me see if I can make this fit. So this is what the text looks like. That's what the text layer looks like in the heads-up display thing. So I just looked at it, and it's a 5x5 grid, right? So sorry, Zach, not right now. So this is, I don't remember if I used periods or, oh yeah, this is so much harder than any other way I could have possibly done it. I'm going to close Slack right now. I tried to shut off my notifications, but I can't. So this is 5 either periods or like square ASCII characters. I forget which. Probably squares because those would be easier. And then you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the first. That's the left wing. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the echo of the left wing. And then the next 5 are the right wing, and then the next 5 are the echo of the right wing. And so then here is the middle circle, and I'll explain why that's black in a second. And then here are the 3 ships. So that's what we're actually working with. And then you just have to keep track of where everything is, which is abstract and stupid. And again, I absolutely do not endorse working this way. This was purely a thought experiment to see if I could do it, because I knew that I probably could. But it was way harder. Like, you could do this with a couple of shape layers in probably 2 minutes, or do it the stupid way I did and take several hours. Oh man, I'm still pretty annoyed with myself for this one. So let me I'm gonna try to see what I did here. So there's not a ton of effects per se. I did have to cheat a little bit. Ooh, don't need those. This beginning, like right on, that is the stroke effect. So technically that part isn't text, because I just wasn't going to do that. I was kind of done at that point. So there's just a couple instances of that. There's a little bit of stuff. There's like some controls in here just to make it easier. And then I used a set matte on itself just to kind of make it a little more glowy and thicker. But there's not really too much like effects driving the look so much as just styling it a little bit. This is all happening in the text animator. So here we go. If we actually get here to where we have wings here. All right, so here's some wing styling so that they're stroked, but the wings are not filled. And then here's the left wing main, which, so I selected them by line, and then it's line 0 through 5 that this is affecting. And so here is that first wing. Turn those controls off. And then you can see I just went through and using my reference, Let me pull this in a little bit. Using my reference, I just keyframed them into the right spots. So using the per character 3D, they're rotating, and since it's by line, those all move together and stay sort of linked up. And then I just kind of did the same thing with the other wings. On the echoes, I was kind of able to just copy paste those keyframes and push them over a little bit, but I needed to kind of manually keyframe the opacity. So just kind of show you. So with each of those, I had to take that next wing here. So there's the echo for the left wing. I had to take it and shove the positions up so that they matched, and then kind of shove it, and then just keyframe it here. So you can see there's that secondary one. I'm playing with the stroke color and the opacity and stuff to kind of give it that echoey look. So I did the same thing with the other wings so that we had 4 wings now. And then the middle ring is, you know, that period that I made here, right there. And that one is filled because one thing I noticed on the original reference is that this actually cuts away from the wing behind it. So I had to position this middle circle, middle oval in 3D space in between the wings, so it'd be covered up by one but covering the other, and then be filled so that if I, that's why I'm using the set matte. So I'm using set matte so that this layer looks at its own luminance channel, and let me turn that back off, and then uses that as a matte for itself. So it's using its own white and black values to matte itself and determine its own visibility. So that way I could use this if I turn off these coloring things here. So this is what it looked like, and then using set matte means that it looks like that, and then this other stuff is just kind of color and style, right? So that circle kind of sits in there. It actually doesn't move. That was pretty easy. And then the ships, I just had to keyframe. They're just a couple more little characters. I did cheat a little bit. I kind of linked them via expressions to some layers here that I had matched up with the original footage because you don't get motion paths in this position here. And that just seemed like silliness. So I linked it with expressions, but I was dumb and I had scaled these layers and this layer a little bit, so I still had to kind of manually keyframe them a little bit despite being linked to the expressions. But that's generally how I got here. This one was relatively insane. Like I said, I was pretty annoyed with myself for even thinking of it because I knew it was going to be stupid. Okay, so hopefully this was somewhat illuminating. I'm sorry that we started so late. How about let's do one more quick question and then I will probably wrap up in a minute here. Oh, I wish. A lot of February is going to be finishing a project that got pushed back later than I wanted it to, and then preparing for Keyframes Conference. Yeah, so suggestions for applying this to FUI design. I've found that this stuff is really useful for that because you get these great little, the wiggly selector gives you so much kind of randomized control where you can clamp things really nicely and you can figure out how fast you want them to go. But, you know, you have a lot of control over which parts of it are wiggling and stuff like that. I would just, you know, I'd encourage you to just get in here and play with these. Anything that's made with simple characters like squares and triangles and circles and stuff like that, which so much of FUI design is, you know, you can apply this around paths. You can, you know, make a thing and then apply some masks or effects to kind of restrict what's visible. It's just really powerful. One of the main restrictions with this is per layer, you can only apply text to a single path. So you aren't, you know, you're restricted in that sense, and you can do some really stupid stuff with it if you want to. Like this is all one path, and the way I did this stupid thing is you can see it is all one path, but I had to space it out so that like for the T crosses and the I dot and stuff that they landed in the right spot. Again, I do not recommend that. Um, it was just dumb. But so yes, Evan, I'm totally going to plug those in just a minute here. Um, so as far as FUI design goes, just get in here and play around. Like you kind of just have to get a feel for these. If you haven't watched that School of Motion tutorial, do that. I'll post the link again in a minute here. Sorry again about all the original chaos and stuff. The link was right in the YouTube description. By the way, if any of you or anyone else who's watching this later, whatever, make cool stuff with this, please, you know, tag it Tech Experiments, tag me. I would love to see what people make with this. It's been cool to see other stuff coming in. I've seen some stuff that looks like mine. I've seen stuff that looks totally different. It's cool. If I can kind of like help people look at this tool differently and realize how useful it is, and also, even if nothing else, if you play around with this enough that you learn how to actually use the text animator when you're bringing on text, then I feel like I've succeeded, because I know that not many people actually know how to use it. The project file I have not released quite yet. I'm going to do it right after the stream, actually. Okay, so I have some links that I'm going to put up now that I want to call out. So if you have been enjoying the idea of this stuff but don't want to do it the hard way, there is a tool called MoGlyph Effects that does a lot of this stuff and has a nice interface for it. It comes with a couple of custom fonts that has all these shapes and stuff already built in, and he has a lot of kind of like effector controls and stuff built into this. So it does a lot of the same stuff, but without having to do all the hard work yourself. So check that out. Matthias Moll at Mammal World, who is maybe one of the most intelligent people in the universe, has a tool called eye expressions. It doesn't do this stuff specifically, but it does have some nice, amongst a lot of other really useful stuff, has a text bundle that has some cool source text expressions in it that can help you with doing some of this stuff, and especially for kind of randomness, maybe FUI related stuff might be really useful for you. I already plugged Type Array, but I'm going to plug it again because it's an incredible tool. It's just a little preset, but it's so useful. I use this all the time. I've had projects where this completely saved my butt and made stuff super useful. Being able to have markers trigger when things happen is so helpful. I can't recommend it enough. And let's see. Okay, if you did not see my School of Motion tutorial, it is called Creatively Using Text Animators in After Effects from School of Motion. You can view it on the School of Motion site here. There's the URL. I'll post that later as well. If you want to come heckle me in person, you can do so at the end of February at the Keyframes conference in Orlando. I'm looking forward to Orlando in February very much. And then I don't think that the Post-Production World schedule is up yet, but if you are going to NAB, I will be speaking at Post-Production World. I will be giving this general presentation at Post-Production World, so if you really want to see that. You should also just come to NAB. The exhibit pass is free, and a bunch of cool people will be there. A bunch of cool people will be at Keyframes as well. Again, some of them are in this chat room right now. Go to a conference. Conferences are lots of fun. You learn stuff. You meet people. It's a good time. Again, if you want to follow me or more of my stuff, I am Kyle Hamrick. You can find me at kylehamrick.com. I'm on the Twitters and the Instagrams and stuff. Those links are right there. Okay. Is there any other things that I need to address here? Any other final questions? Did I skip anything that you're just dying to know? I feel like I overlooked anything else. Good. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. I'm so sorry that we got started late. If it makes you feel better, I was in a constant panic mode for about 90 minutes, which was super fun and a great way to start my like big live stream debut here. I don't know if I'll do it again. One of my biggest takeaways from doing this project is how much I hate posting to Instagram, and that I also do not like doing live streams. Yeah. We'll see if yeah, for real. We'll see if I can get it figured out to do another one more cleanly next time. So thank you guys so much for watching and for all your questions and stuff like that. It's great to see some of you. Like some of you, you know, some of you in here are people that I have learned a ton from as well. So it's really nice to see you in here and being supportive, and it's very humbling. So yeah, I don't know how to end. I feel like there will be one more amazing question, or I'll just keep talking forever. What's the, oh, yes, the Kyle panel. I do still have that up. I'm glad somebody noticed. So this is, I got this from Noel Honig. Um, I'm taking a break from it right now, but I have TA'd for the School of Motion After Effects Kickstart course several times. And Noel has this little window that I think Zach Levitt built for him, maybe. It's just a little empty panel, but you can code it with your own name. And so I am using the picture-in-picture thing in OBS to just drop my feed over that. But it's just a little empty panel. I just thought that would be fun, and it gives me a place to put it, so I'm not covering anything up. I do not have a SoundCloud. I do play guitar, but not well, so I'm not going to do that for any of you. And yeah, I will try to push this over to YouTube and see if I can figure out how to like link it up to the original link. I'm sure I lost some people in the, you know, in the jump over to here. All right. Blogs and forum threads. So you can find me lurking around a lot of After Effects related places online. I am an Adobe community professional, which means that I answer questions on the After Effects forum a lot. And so you can find me there. I'm on the motion design Slack. I'm on a couple of other Slacks. I answer a lot of questions in the School of Motion alumni Facebook page, which is obviously only for people who have taken a course, but I recommend their courses. They're great. I've taken several. I've TA'd for a couple, and I don't know, especially like After Effects Kickstart, I feel like people are going through that, learning in about 6 to 8 weeks what it took people my age like years to learn. So I highly recommend that, and structured online learning in general. Um, I don't know, JC. I sort of like at some point over the last 2 years, it's become a priority for me to answer people's questions, and I feel like I've learned a lot by doing it. So I keep doing it. Sometimes I don't have time for it, and you know it falls by the wayside for a week or something. But you know, I try to do that. I answer questions on Twitter and stuff too. You know, just wherever I see them. um, yeah, sorry about that again. As I'd commented on that other one, I just yeah, I couldn't figure out how to make this work over there. I tried so hard. Oh, to answer Justin's question, he's offering to buy me lunch at Joe's Kansas City, which is Anthony Bourdain said it was the best barbecue place ever. And if you've ever been to Kansas City, people here have strong barbecue opinions. Um, but I agree, it's a great place. It's also right by my house. I think a Carolina, but maybe a Z-Man. But we can negotiate that when you're back in town. Okay, well, I think I'm going to wrap this up because I still need to eat lunch, and it's now 1:30. So maybe there's no line at Joe's right now. We'll see. Maybe I'll go celebrate. So thank you guys so much for joining me here. Sorry again about the late start and the chaos getting over here. I'll see if I can get this posted over to YouTube. I'm pretty sure that I can. Yeah, thanks so much, and make some cool stuff and tag me. I'd love to see it.